This podcast contains detailed plot spoilers, adult language, and mature themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to a podcast of Rare Antiquities, episode 21. Today, on our special episode, we changed the opening credits to have vocals over our theme song. I'm just kidding, of course. Our one-year anniversary episode. I am your host, Geoff.
And I am your co-host, Harry.
So, Harry, welcome back to the show. This is 1 year. Congratulations, man, on sticking with it for so long.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been fun so far. It's been a fun ride.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm surprised we've made it this far, to be quite honest. I think we just kind of started it as an experiment and to see if we actually could talk about something. and based on several marathon episodes, it seems like we have too much to talk about.
We definitely have too much to talk about in a few cases, which I think is, hey, that's what this stuff is here for. So it's great to be able to participate. Keeping with the anniversary theme, today is our general discussion of Star Trek. It is the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, and obviously we need to commemorate the occasion with its own Rare Antiquities episode. So,
are you going to give me some Romulan ale to break open, or?
I was thinking some Klingon blood wine actually would be more appropriate for you.
Okay. For me? Oh, okay.
Hey, man. No more Romulan ale to be served at diplomatic functions, okay? You know the rules.
I know the rules very well, yes. Hey, man, if I can just stand on my own feet at the end of this show, then I know I've passed that Klingon ceremony that Avery Brooks had to get through.
Oh, man. Well, let me tell you, you should be sitting down now because it's going to be a wild ride. You need those restraints they built into the Enterprise E in Nemesis there. So that's what we're going to need. So before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the year that was on the show here. So I'm just going to ask you, Harry, first of all, is the show what you thought it would be when you dreamed up the idea?
Hard to say. To be honest, when I asked, I thought we would just, talk about movies in general. And the idea was go into the forgotten films, the obscure side, movies that and pop culture topics that people have long forgotten. And I think that was the main goal. I think on average, we've done that. We've definitely hit some mainstream movies because geez, we're sitting down doing this. How can we not talk about some of the big event films that happened over this last year? But I think for the most part, yeah. How about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect when you first floated the idea. I kind of thought we would just kind of be talking about movies and, in general. But when you suggested, the idea of the obscure, the overlooked, the forgotten. I mean, in my mind at that point, I thought, okay, I think, we really got something here. We're touching on something. We'll see if our audience agrees. But in all honesty, yeah, it is kind of what I expected in a very good way. We actually agree more often than I thought we would because we so often disagree on a lot of things. But
that is true.
But I mean, my favorite part of the show, I got lots of favorite parts of the show, but my favorite decision that we've made, and I don't know how we made this decision or if it just sort of happened organically, is the surprising each other with the pick for next episode.
Yeah, I love that because, I think it happened right after the first episode. Mm-hmm. Because even before we recorded UHF, I think we agreed, even before we did episode 2, we said, what would be the first one we would do? And, I recommended UHF and I floated it by you and you said, yeah, that's a good one to start with. And then I don't know how it evolved beyond there, but I think it's great that we've been just surprising each other after that. I definitely think that's one of the highlights of each episode is I anticipate what you're going to bring up. And I think I've made you laugh quite a few times on my picks. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. I'm not sure how many other podcasts out there. I'm sure we're not the only one that does that, but I definitely think that's something unique to our show. At least partially unique.
I agree. I hope we're the only ones who are doing it, and we've copyrighted it, everyone. So hands off.
Yes, or watch out, radioactive man. Yeah, no, but it's been good actually. Then I have a question for you. Just maybe out of the last year, what has been a fond memory for you, like, or maybe not just maybe a fond memory, but then also maybe a favorite episode we've done. And actually, a curious question is your least favorite episode that you think we've done from your perspective.
Oh man, that's a tough one. I think I had the most fun during the Leprechaun episode. I don't know if it's our best episode. It's hard to single anything out because, let's face it, every episode's been pretty fucking spectacular.
Yeah, but you were pretty fucking drunk through that whole thing. I don't know how many bottles of whiskey or how many glasses of whiskey you were polishing off there, but I'm pretty sure I heard that cork being unscrewed and popped like a few times through that episode.
Yeah, there's no question that you did hear that more than once during that episode, and you can't blame me. Yeah, I had a blast, and surprised I remember it as well. Maybe it helps that I was able to listen to the recording after. But that was a lot of fun. After, as far as a low point, I don't know. I mean, as I was saying to you before, we definitely got into the weeds in some of the Star Wars stuff quite a bit, but that was a lot of fun too. So as far as just content-wise, I don't know. I think we've had pretty worthwhile episodes top to bottom. What about you?
Yeah, I've had fun in every episode. There hasn't been an episode where I've said, oh God, I want this to end. I mean, definitely the Star Wars ones were getting a bit long. Hard for me to nail down a favorite. I mean, the prequel trilogy, I think, definitely was one. And then I really think we had a really good discussion on the Mosquito Coast. And surprisingly, Halloween.
Yeah.
I thought like we really brought a lot to the table in those two episodes. They were really good discussions. And yeah, the prequel trilogy was no surprise. It was a fun one. Surprisingly, I think, even though I haven't listened to it in a while, I think maybe if we're saying what's a duller episode, I think it was, even though it was a fun one to go through, it was the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Because we pretty much just all agreed on everything, right? It was just a love fest, and, you know, there's not much new we can really bring to the table that hasn't already been discussed about, and we also haven't listened to on other shows or podcasts or reviews or read on the internet about 1 billion times already. So I think that was maybe one we could have probably skipped, but I think just as the trial by fire to prep ourselves for episode 7, I think it was a necessary step.
Yeah, we had to do it.
Yeah, we had to do it.
So the last question I have for you just kind of came to me now. Which plot synopsis did you like writing the most?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Which plot synopsis did I like writing the most? Oh, man. Maybe Raising Arizona.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think Raising Arizona was a good one just because I had a lot of fun just picturing the cage throughout the whole thing. How about yourself?
I think I had the most fun writing the Batman v Superman synopsis, to be honest. That one seemed to afford the most opportunity for just poking fun at a movie really easily. Like, there was a lot of material there to just lay into it.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, I really enjoy actually, even though it is a task we have to take on each time, I really enjoy thinking about how we're really going to introduce and put together an episode and what are the important points you actually have to talk about in the plot synopsis.
Yeah.
So you have to narrow it down, and I enjoy doing it for the ones that I've been doing. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been good. Okay, well, let's get into the show proper here. So we're going to be talking about Star Trek. 50th anniversary this year. So Star Trek first hit the air in 1966 with the original series. We have 5 television series, an animated series, 13 features, and more to come. We have the new Star Trek show, Star Trek Discovery, coming in January. So we have a lot.
Is it January that it comes out?
Yeah.
Are you serious? That quickly?
Yeah, it's coming. January.
But I don't even think they've started filming yet.
No, I believe production begins next month.
Oh, shit. They haven't even announced the cast yet, so that's interesting.
They haven't, and that does seem like a pretty quick turnaround time, but that being said, it's only a 13-episode season. Well, yeah, now that you mention it, that is not a
good sign.
Not necessarily a good sign. Well, I mean, they're in full-on pre-production right now, though, so I'm sure they have a lot of the scripts ready to go. I'm sure they have a lot of the sets almost completed. I bet the casting is well underway, and we're just going to get a whole crew announcement. I think they're holding back I bet a lot of it is set, and they're just holding back a lot of the information to be revealed at the Star Trek convention in New York in September, which is sort of meant to be the big 50th anniversary convention. So I think we would probably have more news by now if it wasn't for that.
Maybe. Comic-Con was just here, I think it was like a few weeks ago? 3 weeks ago? Yeah. So, I mean, I thought that would have been the place to really, announce a lot of things and introduce a bunch of new fans because what's happening, and get the word of mouth out, because Star Trek convention, you're just going to get the hardcore Star Trek fans there. Yeah. Comic-Con's really, I think, where you should have dropped that. But maybe we can have that discussion a little later.
Yeah. Let's start off with a big topic that I wanted to ask you, and this is a big question. Star Trek is a lot of things, but Harry, when you think about, your perspective, what is Star Trek to you? Think about, relevance, its influence, its purpose.
Well, I mean, you can give the classic generic, and it's true, the description, hope for humanity, like the future of humanity. It's a dream where, all cultures, all people, all races, even alien races are getting together in a pseudo-utopian-like future, and you're going out there and exploring the frontier. There's no poverty, there's no issues with education, there's no war, there's no problems with humanity. We have gone past all this petty bullshit and put all those differences aside, and the word unity can be mentioned there too. That's definitely there, but when I was young, that really wasn't one of the reasons why I got into Trek. You're too young to kind of understand some of those concepts, even though I think that's one of unity and hope and how people have described Trek generically, humanity's potential, right? That's there. But for me, it's more family and adventure, because I look at the crews, and the one thing I think one of the strengths of each series, no matter which series you like or dislike, right? Let's focus on a television series, because that's where really Trek starts and stops at TV. So let's just ignore the feature films. It's about family, teamwork, and them working together as a team and going off an adventure. And home, which is the Enterprise, because the Enterprise is a character onto itself. And that's really what struck me when I watched the original series on rerun when I was growing up in the 80s. On Saturday mornings, I would watch, early morning cartoons. Then around noon, me and my sister and my dad every Saturday, we'd be watching Star Trek. And why we were hooked, it's a fun adventure. It's a little goofy. William Shatner's Captain Kirk is definitely an awe-inspiring person in several different ways and interpretations. But I think the strength of the relationships between the crew, especially between him, Bones, and Spock, and them, working together to solve problems, that really struck home for me. And that just got even more stronger when TNG came, when DS9 came, and I guess the other series. The same can be said. So I think that's where I'd leave it off there, is the concepts of family and teamwork.
I think I would agree with a lot of that. I never really thought about the teamwork aspect, even though, you think about it, it's quite prevalent in the original series and in the Next Generation. I was thinking about, the original series influence on my childhood and my outlook on life. Same as you, I caught the reruns through the 80s. My mom is a huge Star Trek fan, so she would have watched it when it was originally on, and then when the reruns came on, it was always on. If there was rerun Star Trek on, my mom had it on there, and my brother and I were planted in front of the TV watching that. And I think that watching as an adult, you can poke some holes in some of these concepts that I'm going to talk about. But I think that Star Trek is the reason why I was so surprised as an adolescent and as a young adult that we still had things like sexism, racism, the idea that, you could go into any workplace and women would make less money than their male counterparts for the same job, or that somebody might not hire somebody else because he's black or because he's gay or for any other reason. Star Trek is the reason why those things surprised me as I started to go more out into the world beyond just being a kid and going to school and stuff like that. Never would have occurred to me that those things were still problems.
So then Gene Roddenberry, he succeeded in enlightening you.
In that sense, I wouldn't even call it enlightening. It was just how it was.
No, it was just how it was. And
Yeah.
I fully understand, and I can relate 100%. But for me, I wouldn't say, the way I'm interpreting your statement is that you watch Star Trek and then you're saying, why are you questioning why isn't it like that in the real world? Well, you're shocked that it's not like that in the real world because remember, I'm coming from a minority. I have a minority background, so for me, it's a little different, and that's why the concept of hope, the concept of peace, and working together, the hope that we will put aside petty differences, and there will be no such thing as racism.
Yeah,
humanity as a whole will just group together and unite together and move forward and conquer anything that's in its path.
I wasn't aware that we still had these problems when I was a kid.
See, that's where the difference is, because I was aware.
Yeah, right. I mean, obviously, we're coming from different places. So when I realized that we hadn't gotten over these things, I was so disappointed. I was surprised and disappointed in, I guess, humanity. I mean, obviously, not everybody. Lots of people are not prejudiced, and lots of people are forward thinking. And I was disappointed that it wasn't everybody. I thought we were already there, and obviously we are not. But I think that was the strongest influence that it had on me. Larger than that, what is Star Trek? I mean, that's maybe
it's like answering the question, what is life? What is the meaning of life?
Yeah, exactly. Very difficult.
Yeah, it's very difficult because there's so many answers. There's not one that's right. There's not one that's wrong.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to just kind of get that out there to get some perspective on how ingrained it is in us. I know it's a big, important piece for you, and it's a big, important piece of my life as well.
It's an important piece for all of humanity, as it is anyways, because, we don't have to get it into the details, but of course, everybody knows what the influence of the 60s show was for so many people.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about racial relations, sexual relations, even just concepts on war, the impact it has on people, and then also technology.
Right.
And influencing people to go into certain careers. I mean, this has inspired people to create, CDs or cell phones, or people are still trying to create tricorders, and they're almost there. These have influenced people to go into certain fields of study, people to be inspired to be astronauts or doctors or engineers. So this has impacted everybody who was watching the show when they were young.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Anybody who is, in filmmaking or in engineering or in aeronautics or computer science that was alive in the 60s, I'd say good chance that they're there and Star Trek had an influence.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I would say that easily.
It's unique. Nobody joined the CIA because of watching James Bond. At least I don't think so.
I'm sure you probably had some futile attempts of some morons who thought they could do it and it'd be cool. Just like I'm pretty sure there was a lot of people who said, oh, I like Indiana Jones. Let me take some archaeology classes. I'm going to be an archaeologist, right?
Right? I think that anybody who's taken an archaeology class is like, I like Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
I guarantee it. So here's a question for you. So talking about the influence that Star Trek has had on so many people, we have 5 Star Trek series and an animated series to pull from. Do you think the intended audience is the same for each of the different series?
Oh, that's tough. That's a tough call. I would say between the original trilogy, Crossing the Streams again.
Yeah.
The original series and the next gen, I would say that's the same target audience, 100%. Yeah. Except, trying to also bring in a new generation of fans, right? But the hook was, it was going to be the same, just with a new crew. And they even started copying episodes, right? It was the same style of show. And until it got a little bit later on and found a little bit more of its wings, TNG really started to, the concept was just an updated version of the original series. But I think when you get to DS9, I think that's where things get a little different. And I think you might have a different target audience, at least maybe not on the first concept, but a little bit later.
Yeah. So who do you think, who are they trying to appeal to instead of, or in addition to obviously they want to pull back the same fans, but is Deep Space Nine going for a broader appeal or what? Or a narrower one than the original series and the Next Generation?
It's hard to say because, the success of DS9 from a Nielsen standpoint isn't there. It wasn't there. So then obviously you can argue one way it was for a narrow audience, but I think it was for a niche.
Yeah.
And they accomplished it, and they accomplished it so well. And I don't want to give my thoughts away, but that's my favorite series out of all of them. Right?
Well, you just gave your thoughts away.
Yeah. So I don't want to give it away, but I gave it away. Voyager, on the other hand, goes back to the same tropes as the original series in TNG. Enterprise, I think, might have been the one that really was trying to reach out to a different type of audience. I think so. But I think all the other shows were trying to reach the same audience. Who was that? Original Trek fans, intellects, educated people, but it wasn't a generic mass audience because they weren't dumbing shit down. Right? They were attacking, and we talked about this numerous times on our podcast, social commentary. So they're getting into topics of discussion, analyzing it. I don't think they're going into the depths that you think they're going. Still broad strokes to an extent. The original series might be a little different, where I think they're going into it really deeply. But I think TNG onwards were a little bit more broader, but still trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
But, I mean, when you get to Enterprise, I think then you're trying to get into more of a mainstream pop culture feel. At least that was their attempt. For whatever reason, it didn't work. Maybe because of Trek burnout at the time. And maybe it was too ahead of its time. And now you look at New Trek, the features, the reboot, and it's a completely different audience that they're targeting. Massively different.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. We can get to the new movies or not if we decide. The Star Trek Enterprise seemed to be the first one that was trying to branch out into a real mainstream pop culture audience, not just Star Trek fans.
I agree.
Yeah, clearly it did. And they weren't entirely successful. In fact, they weren't really successful at getting a broader audience. And they alienated some of the core fan base.
I think that was because, again, we can get into it later or now. As I mentioned before, you have burnout. It was just too soon, too much too soon. And, the casting was just all wrong. And I think they really dropped the ball on that, in my opinion. And I think that's part of its downfall.
Yeah. Well, we can do a deep dive into Enterprise here if we want, but let's maybe take a bit of a step back here. You've already said that Deep Space Nine is your favorite. Why don't you talk a little bit about what makes it your favorite Star Trek series? One,
because it's so different than what came before. So, in the first season was horrible because it was exactly like TNG's first season, except it was just on a space station, and you had a black commander instead of a bald white Englishman captain, right? So, being progressive again, which is
except he was only a commander, which was a first.
And strange. I'm pretty sure it was racism and the fear of backlash, even in the 80s. Or 90s? When was this released? Early 90s?
This would have been 1990. I think it was, it premiered in January of 93, I think.
Yeah, see, it's still disappointing because there's that fear of making him a captain right off the bat. It's a black man.
Yeah.
Eventually, even though a few seasons in, he became captain, rightfully so, but strange that he did not start off that way.
Yeah. And I thought that was really weird when it did start. Like, I remember watching it, I'm like, well, wait, how come he's not a captain? He's only a commander? Like, why? Who's the captain? Like, who's in charge?
You wouldn't find that shit now.
No, you wouldn't.
Even after, Voyager onwards, you wouldn't find that shit happen again. Yeah. So I think they learned their lesson pretty fast there.
Yeah.
I think it was probably a studio worry or something like that. They, didn't want to alienate potentially racist Star Trek fans.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They don't want to push the envelope too far too soon or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't think you understand your core audience, you dumbasses, right?
Yeah.
So, but why I like DS9, again, very hard to articulate because there's so much about it. But I think because it was so different than what came before, the original series in TNG was more about hope and the idea that humanity and Starfleet was perfect. Couldn't make any mistakes, like real mistakes.
Yeah.
They didn't explore any of the topics of humanity that are a little darker, like Starfleet can do no wrong. And even though I think the feature films, even with the original series cast and the TNG cast, explored some of those concepts in the features very briefly, but DS9 got into the nitty-gritty of that stuff very quickly, like a couple seasons in. And then because it was more episodic, instead of individual standalone episodes, that sets itself apart from predecessors. And it was something that really wasn't seen too often at the time. you had 2-parters, you had 3-parters in TV shows and stuff like that, and cliffhangers, which were carried over to the beginning of the following season, and most TV shows were like that. But continuous story arcs that were happening throughout season to season. I think maybe while it might have, DS9 wasn't the first show ever to do it, it was the first Star Trek show to do it, and that was why it was so different and so good. And the writing was just so good, and the cast was very good too. It may not be my favorite cast, but still a very strong cast.
Yeah, it was very much a writer's show.
Yes.
And I know that a lot of the writers who started out on The Next Generation and helped develop Deep Space Nine, they were frustrated by some of the constraints placed on them in the Star Trek universe, or in the Next Generation universe, because, they couldn't do serialized storytelling. They couldn't leave the characters in one place at the end of an episode and then start with them in the same place. They kind of had to hit the reset button for every episode, because for syndication or for people who don't necessarily catch every episode, to bring in people who haven't seen any episodes so they could jump in at any point. Very frustrating and I know this just from watching documentaries and reading behind the scenes stuff. The writers were very frustrated with that aspect of The Next Generation. And then after Gene Roddenberry's death, they were really able to sink their teeth into deeper material with Deep Space Nine. And it's a good thing. And they had, that show had excellent writing, which is a good thing because the cast is a little uneven, just as far, if we're talking about acting ability. Everybody did a pretty good job with what they were given, but the overall talent isn't quite there. I mean, I think that's
interesting. That's interesting that you mentioned that. I think that's a very strong cast. I find as a group, they're just as strong as TNG.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really difficult to make comparisons because it's so...
But I mean, like, no one's going to beat Patrick Stewart in the acting category.
Well, no, I mean, that's...
I mean, so we know that. So,
no.
But, I mean, even though Avery Brooks is like one crazy SOB now, I thought he did hats off to him through the show. He did a great job. That's my opinion.
I don't think he did a poor job at all. He's got some idiosyncrasies to him that don't really stand out a little bit for me. I mean, William Shatner has some idiosyncrasies to his performance, but for me, they work for the character.
But it's also having some fun too. Like the guys, he's letting loose. You can look at it, and this is going to be blasphemy. Maybe I'm going to be hunted down by Trekkies, but Picard was a stuffy character.
He was a stuffy character.
And it was great.
Yeah.
It was so different than Kirk. And I love Picard. Probably one of my favorite Star Trek characters. But you needed something different. And I think you needed someone who had some idiosyncrasies that can, bring another layer out that's needed. A little more of a bombastic type of character.
I agree with you on some of those points. I prefer his performance to something that's totally wooden, and for the most part, I do enjoy him. I just don't. I don't know. It's hard to say. I would have liked somebody with a little bit more skill in that role, especially following Patrick Stewart. I know you need to do it totally different, but some more skill would have been. I would have appreciated that. My favorite actor on that show, the guy who I thought had the most ability, is Cole Meany, and I thought he was fantastic as O'Brien through the whole series, and I'm going back to Next Generation.
He's good, but he just didn't have a lot to do.
He does not have a lot to do. His character is very one-dimensional.
He doesn't care. Yeah, he's one-dimensional.
But that's the character, not...
Like, I think...
He brought as much as he could to that character who was really horribly underwritten.
Yeah, and this is going to turn into a Deep Space Nine podcast show. But one of the other things about DS9 that's really, really excellent and done and well written, and we're talking about actresses and characters, they had the girl, I think it was Nana Visitor. She did a remarkable job playing Nerys. I thought so. Again, I think it's a strong female character, and I think she did a remarkable job through the entire run. And I think she had a very good arc, starting from someone who is just angry and doesn't want Starfleet's presence there. And she's just kind of aggressive and adversarial to everybody she sees. And she had a great arc through the entire show. That's my opinion.
Yeah, she did have a really good arc. You're absolutely right there.
And that's different than the other shows, because the female characters in the other shows, obviously, even though Uhura just being on the bridge, being a black woman on a TV show was groundbreaking in the 60s. Good for her, but she didn't do anything.
Well, she was still basically the secretary, though. She was answering the phones.
So we know that. So we give her the credit where credit is due for that time. But then, and the show really was only about Kirk, Spock, and Bones, even though there were B characters on the bridge.
Yeah,
even though we love them.
It wouldn't have mattered what she did.
But let's focus on TNG, and I thought the female characters on that show were good, but they were not super progressive. They're not where they should have been. They're slightly underrepresented.
Yeah, well, I agree. That's a topic I wanted to come back to in a bit. So let's.
That's why I wanted to point out that's another strength of DS9.
You're right. I thought that she had an excellent arc. I found I guess you put it in a little bit more context. I saw in that character in Kira some of the things that plagued the latter two series, which was sometimes anger is substituted for when I don't know what feeling to portray on camera, I'm just going to act angry. And sometimes that's the writing as well, but we could talk about that later. But no question, her arc was fantastic. And part of that as well is the absolutely unbelievable recurring characters that Deep Space Nine gave us.
Oh, yes.
Gul Dukat.
Best villain on the TV shows, hands down.
I guess you could make that argument. Garrick, another one of my favorites. Even that, who was that other Gul who used to be one of Dukat's flunkies?
Oh, I can't remember the name, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
he turned into a hero at the end.
He did, yeah. He was such a smarmy guy.
Damar.
Oh, man.
Yeah, good. Great
character.
Even though it's not much of an arc, but it's an arc. And to take a no-name character in this show who's a bad guy and turn him into more of a slightly more sympathetic character in such a short time span, that's great writing.
Oh, absolutely great writing. And very ballsy. Again, because they just couldn't do that on the Next Generation. They couldn't carry those arcs forward. Mm-hmm. So, kudos to the writers there. I mean, I'm glad they had the courage to do it. Unfortunately, it didn't resonate all that well with audiences. As you said, the ratings weren't quite there.
I think the ratings were there. I mean, obviously they weren't TNG level, but they were there to get them through the 7 seasons and get syndication and all that stuff. But I think if that show was released now, obviously with modernized budget and special effects and all that stuff, I think it would be very highly successful.
Yeah, I think it's a good chance that it would be that successful because serialized storytelling is so normal now.
Yes. And I think that's what Discovery is going to be, no matter what the format is. If it's going to be in like American Horror Story style, and it's going to be one season it's about a crew or a story, the next season's about another thing, or if it's just going to be this one crew and one ship throughout all the seasons, whatever format it's going to definitely be serialized, continual arc storytelling, and I think they already confirmed that, right? They said it's going to be like a novel or something, is what Brian Fuller said. And
that's correct. That's what he said, is that it's they're going to be like telling a novel over the course of a season there. And Fuller was one of the better writers. I think he had a couple of DS9 episodes.
Oh, I didn't know that. He wrote on DS9?
Oh, he's an old Trek guy. Yeah, he wrote a couple episodes for Deep Space Nine, and he wrote some of the actually good episodes of Star Trek Voyager. But his shit's dark.
I mean, now this is the dangerous direction. Things don't necessarily always have to be dark.
No, I agree, but not dark in the sort of conventional sense, but very
adult.
Very adult and very complex.
And that's what you need.
That's who he is.
It's got to be smart, complex, solid storytelling.
Yeah,
and you need that kind of picture that we talked about with the prequel trilogy. If George just sat down, planned the whole thing out, each script, without writing page by page dialogue, if he just knew the exact whole thing instead of a broad story, very broad strokes, it would have been amazing. But he didn't do that. But that's what they need to do here for this show. Yeah. Whether it's one season long or multiple seasons long stories, storytelling. But I think they need to really hammer down a lot of the detail to make it work. Because the danger here is if I don't know, maybe it's too early to talk about it in the show, but if Discovery does not work, Trek's in trouble.
I absolutely agree. Trek is in trouble if Discovery does not work. And maybe we can talk a little bit about this now since we are talking about it now. I'm not worried about the talent that's involved because, again, Brian Fuller, I don't know how familiar you are with his work. Again, he has worked on Star Trek. He's very offbeat. He's very creative. He can do a lot of different styles. I mean, he did this show a few years ago called Pushing Daisies. I don't know if you ever saw it.
Never saw it, but I heard about it.
And it was really creative, but it was way too off the wall. It was never going to. I'm surprised it made it on the air in the first place. Far too advanced for network television.
Mm-hmm. You need to have a touch of mainstream in it no matter what, because
you do, yeah.
Even Trekkie, and you still even have to have that elements of old school Trek, something that's very familiar. You have to be familiar, but you still have to spread your wings and be something different. Otherwise, you're in trouble. Yeah.
And I think we're going to get something different while still being Star Trek. The only thing I'm worried about the network hamstringing it by putting it on that stupid on-demand service that...
Well, I think that's a separate discussion. Maybe let's save that for the end. Yeah. Maybe let's save Discovery for the end here. We talked about DS9. I said that's my favorite show. Not spend too much time on. Let's still go on the show. What's your favorite?
Well, my favorite is Next Generation.
And why is that? Now, I know the cast is unbeatable as an ensemble.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to argue, especially with Patrick Stewart leading the way. But why is it your favorite? Tell me why, beyond the cast.
It'd be hard. I guess I could go into all the intellectual reasons. It is the one that resonates with me emotionally. I feel that show when I watch it. It gets right into my heart, into my bloodstream. It is so pervasive in my being. It just hooks up to me emotionally. And
it's funny. I feel the same way when it comes to the original series. Because if we want to just say what your personal connection to is with Star Trek, for me, it will always be the original series. Even though it's hokey and corny, and many episodes are still very hard to get through if you come back and watch it today. But the spirit of Star Trek really hasn't been... It is there. There's a magic to that show that's beyond the corny, cheesy factor. There is something very special about the original series that still resonates with me today.
Yeah.
When I watch that show. And I really think it's between Spock and Kirk and Bones, I mean, there is no relationship in Trek that is as strong as those three. But anyways, that's just me. But let's go back to the TNG.
I mean, like I say, obviously I have that. The emotional connection is there. I love more of the characters on the Next Generation than on any of the other series. There are characters from every series that I love, but okay, I mean, Captain Picard, what do you say? I mean, it's Patrick Stewart as Captain Picard. That's all you need to say. It's fucking unbelievable. It is. Even
though I still take Captain Kirk. Shatner's Captain Kirk. I'd rather serve under Picard, and I admire Picard more as an intellectual. But for me, it's still about the Captain. It's still Captain Kirk.
Well, no, I mean, that's fair enough. It's not really even an argument that you could have. Who's... Like, are we arguing who's better? I mean...
This is the first argument that happened on the internet. We're how many years late since the internet started?
yeah. Right, you're late to the party, guys. Shit. Who's better, Captain Picard or Captain Kirk? Fuck. Yeah, no, it's not an argument that you can even have. I mean...
but I love them both.
Oh, yeah, of course. You really do have to hand it to Patrick Stewart. I'm of the opinion that without his performance... what he was able to bring to it and the way he was able to elevate everybody else around him.
Yeah, that show
Next Generation, it might not have made it out of season 2.
Yeah, I think so. Season 2, maybe season 3. I think season 3 is really where it got its footing.
Well, it got its footing.
And with him. I think he was still a little wonky in season 2 as well.
He was still stuffy. I kind of want to talk about season 2 of Next Generation on its own as a separate topic, to be honest. But I love Data. I mean, Brent Spiner was... Brent Spiner is not a very good actor, but as Data, he
nailed it.
He nailed it. He was so good as Data. LeVar Burton is, I mean, I love Geordi. He's a bit of a punchline, can only score on the holodeck. you know, but God damn if you don't love the son bitch, you know?
Instead of the punchline, I just love how, coolant leak, his coolant leak expressions is like, shield generator's been hit. He's the Rick Foley of the TNG cast, right? So
I love how
do you not like him?
He's got to do the Indiana Jones roll under the
time to roll.
Oh, I love that. So
that's what I think. I hate to say it, but when I think of Geordi, that's what I think about.
Anyway, Michael Dorn. I love Michael Dorn as Worf.
Let's talk about Michael Dorn for a second.
Okay, let's talk about Michael Dorn. Go for it.
Just a quick thing. Aside from Captain Kirk and Captain Picard, Worf is my third favorite character. I think he has overall, not just because he has appeared in the most Trek, so he gets that advantage, but I think his storylines have been the most interesting, and I think he could be the most well-written character out of all of the characters on any show. That's my opinion.
That is an interesting observation because, I loved his character as well. I love Michael Dorn. I thought he did a fantastic job. I love how obtuse he could be at times, how thick he could be at times.
Well, really, he was there. He was the Arnold Schwarzenegger of the TNG cast, right? He was there with the one-liners.
Yeah.
But then, and he still was throughout the whole thing. And you can even argue in the movies, he was really there just for the punchlines.
Well, in the movies, he was for sure. And he was very underwritten for a long time. But I remember I've listened to a couple of interviews with Michael Dorn, and he said that, they didn't give him anything to do at the start. He was just there to be the Klingon on the bridge. So he had to he had to bring whatever he could to the one line he had, or the one growl or scowl or sideways glance. He had to bring all of that. He was the most underwritten character.
He was underwritten in the first few episodes, or in the first season, because everybody was. But I just think his complete arc from then all the way to the end of DS9, it's quite amazing. That's just
look at how many years that spanned. They had,
even if you wanted to just narrow it down to TNG, you could almost, with the exception of maybe a couple of Borg episodes, pretty much Worf had all the major interesting storylines. He might have not had the most.
He had the Klingon stuff.
Yeah, he had the arcs. He had the interesting stuff happen to continuously. Every character had their moments. And yes, Patrick Stewart, Captain Picard's the lead. So I'd say individual standalone episodes, in terms of acting and performance, you probably can't get better than Patrick Stewart in some of his episodes. But I think overall, the writing for the character, because really Picard's not really allowed to grow too much. That's true. Kind of the point. The same thing with Captain Kirk. He can't grow too much. After Worf, let me first get your thoughts on Worf here. Do you agree with that sentiment? Even if you just want to focus only on TNG.
His arcs on TNG are great. I loved his storyline on TNG, and I did love most of it on Deep Space Nine. The Jadzia Dax romance didn't really do it for me.
I thought it was great. I thought it was funny. I had some great episodes there, but that's just me.
No, I think there are good episodes. I think there are great episodes in there as well with the two as a relation. But I wasn't a huge fan of Dax.
That's interesting. I like Dax.
Yeah, the character was fine. What's her name? Terry Farrell, I think, is her name. I didn't care for her performance all the time. She wasn't bad, but she was too uneven. I think they struggled with some chemistry sometimes. She and Michael Dorn there, so that might have been part of it. But Worf's arc, actually, I'll tell you this: his brother's arc was also really good and heartbreaking. How they ended his brother's arc.
It was a great episode.
Great episode there. Yeah,
it was heartbreaking. I remember my wife watched that. She was very sad. My wife loves Star Trek as well. She's not a diehard, but she's seen pretty much everything Trek up to probably the end of DS9. I don't know if she's seen anything beyond DS9, but she was sad after that episode. I remember her watching that for the first time.
Yeah. Well, I got to be careful when that episode comes on in our house because my girlfriend's the same with that episode. You got to get the Kleenex out because that one hits you in the feels for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Now we're talking about characters and their arcs. I want to just kind of go back a little bit to Cisco, because one of the strengths of that character that was so different than the other two captains and the captains that followed is that he was a family man. He was a father.
Yeah.
And I really think one of the strengths of the character and that show, even though it wasn't a focus, I honestly felt a true chemistry, closeness, and bond between him and Jake as father and son. And some people that won't resonate too, because maybe it resonated to me even before I was a parent. But I can tell you, I haven't even seen DS9 since my kids have been born. But that is a strength of that character and a strength of that series. I feel as a group, it's not just Cisco and Jake, but I think as a group, the DS9 cast is closer than they are in the other shows. And I think that's another one of their strengths. Even though I think there might have been some friction on the sets. I think there was reading stuff behind the scenes. I think, there was maybe two groups of, friends on set. But I think they put those differences aside. And when they collaborated with each other, everybody was pretty close with each other. I mean, obviously with the exception of Quark, because he's the outsider and he's kind of like the schemy little weasel on the side. So you're only going to get as close to him with the main crew as you're going to get. But I think, as a whole, I think that's one of the strengths of DS9 as well, going back to my original one on why I like that show. Because there's only so much closeness you're going to get to on TNG. I think Riker's pretty close with everybody, but Data's kind of on his own, but he's okay with Geordi. Picard's not really close with anybody, even though he has kind of a friendship with Will Riker. But I don't really get that feeling of closeness, except Dr. Crusher and Troy. They have a good relationship with each other, a good rapport, but they have individual relationships. I think there's more of a group ensemble relationship is a little stronger on DS9 than on TNG.
I disagree. I don't feel that on Deep Space Nine. I feel the almost exact opposite, where they had their individual relationships and they had more trouble relating as a team. I get much more of the team closeness from the Next Generation cast.
Really? I don't know. Yeah. I would say the other way, but that's just me.
I will say, though, since you brought up the father-son dynamic, those two actors played off really well. They had great chemistry.
Yeah, amazing chemistry.
And I bought that relationship. No problem.
Oh, yeah. And some of the greater episodes of DS9 definitely are between dealing with the father-son relationship.
Yeah, the one where Jake is like, he gets old and he's the writer in the
that's
future.
A great episode.
Very good episode. Yeah, very powerful. Good for who's the actor that played him?
Cyril Lofton.
Right. He was really good.
He was good, even though the character was kind of dumb.
Yeah,
he was just kind of like, I'm just going to stay here and report on the war while everybody retreats. I mean, that storyline was stupid. He had a couple of dumb moments, but I liked how he wasn't necessarily always a strong character. I mean, he was thrust into the... Yes. Remember, there was a couple of episodes where he was thrust into the middle of a battle and he was scared, running away from everything. He wasn't he wanted to be brave like everybody else around him, like all those Starfleet people and his dad, but he wasn't. You get those kind of explorations on DS9 that I don't see anywhere else.
No, you would never get on Next Generation. And that is a really good episode. You're right, because he is so scared in that episode and he's so ashamed of himself for being a coward. And and he does such a good job.
Oh, and you're getting me. I think I'm going to pop in a DS9 episode after I'm done watching this.
Well, I'm actually, I'm going to start another run of DS9, I think, from the top, because we're just about done. We're just finishing our latest run through of the Next Generation pretty quick here. So we're going to just jump into Deep Space Nine.
So how about Elle? Tell me more about your love of TNG outside of the ensemble. What is its strength?
Well, it's great. I think it elevates what Star Trek is all about. We've sort of touched on what Star Trek, kind of means to us. The hope that we can be better. And sometimes it's even the hope that we can be better, even when we know right now that we're not, or even if we think that we can't, you can kind of rise above it. There's so many examples of that. And that's hard to put your finger on, but an example that I come back to from time to time is the third season episode, Yesterday's Enterprise, and the whole universe. We have an alternate timeline. Everything's gone to shit. They're in the middle of a war, and it's like all they needed was a hint that things could be better, that things should be better. And they were ready to fight and to die for that concept.
No, that's great. And that ties back into what you said you pretty much liked most about Star Trek.
Yeah. And I liked some of the themes that they explored on Next Generation. A lot of we got a lot of what it means to be human through Data's journey through Next Generation. I thought his arc was pretty good. I mean,
Measure of a Man is just my God, one of the best episodes of TV I've ever seen.
Oh yeah. Oh, forget about it. Measure of a Man. Such a good episode. And it's surprising they were able to pack all of that into, 43 minutes or whatever. Their journey was just so, you get the adventure that the original series pioneered. And I love that it's hard to explain. I mean, there's so much that, sometimes it went their way, sometimes it didn't. I'm thinking of the episode, I believe it's called First Contact, and they make first contact with that species that's just on the verge of breaking the warp barrier.
Yeah.
But there's political strife there. There's what seems to be a sort of a conservative movement. People who were thinking they were moving too far too quickly.
And then, they were kind of like, people were getting hurt, and people were, it's almost like undiscovered country. People are frightened of change, right? They're not,
right, exactly.
They're not ready.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a great concept.
It's a great concept. And what I loved about it, how that episode played out, I think that if we had seen that episode on the original series, Captain Kirk would have grabbed that society kicking and screaming into, the warp-enabled future filled with aliens and progressive federations and so forth.
No, what he would have done is he would have just given a speech at the end about the Constitution.
Yes, he would have.
And he would then leave and say, then it's up to you. Yeah, he would probably have, I don't know if he'd take him kicking and screaming.
I think he would, because he often would decide what was right. And he definitely would have banged that doctor for sure.
That's a staple of the time. So
of course.
I can't.
Yeah.
That was every TV show at the time.
No. I'm praising him for it.
Okay, at least we're clear.
But what? Yeah, of course. No, I mean, are you kidding? I'm jealous. What I'm saying, but so about the episode, the Next Generation episode, is that at the end when they decide not to, when the leader of the world, the prime minister there, tells Picard, no, we're not ready. We're not going to do this yet, and they say okay, and they leave. I loved that outcome because it wasn't the resolution that I was expecting watching it as the audience, but it also shows how progressive the Federation is. So even though, we're promoting all of the rights that we have, and
we'll wait for you.
Yeah, we're not going to force you to do anything. Like, you're going to go in your own time. You say no. Okay. Yeah, we'll be here when you're ready. Mm-hmm. And I love that outcome. Thought that was fantastic. And I love those explorations into humanity, into the ideas of what we can be. Again, that just connects with me emotionally. And those are the examples of why it's my favorite.
Okay, no, that's good. So how about, let's maybe have a quick talk about, so it doesn't get too long, maybe how about Voyager and Enterprise? What are your thoughts on those two shows then?
Oh, God. I mean, Voyager, both shows, a shame because they're such wastes of excellent ideas. Love the concept for Star Trek Voyager. They're on the other side of the galaxy, no contact with the Federation. I thought that was just a magnificent idea. It was sort of trying to go back to some of the original Star Trek ideas of exploration and the unknown with the sensibilities of Deep Space Nine, in the sense that it's a little bit darker, more conflict within our principal characters, maybe have some opportunity for some more drama just within the crew. Great concepts there. And unfortunately, the writing was bad, just straight up, all around, not good writing. I don't know that I could say it was poorly cast necessarily, or if it was the writing. I mean,
I think it's a combo of both, but I mean, there's definitely, the ensemble was not there, right?
No chemistry.
Even if you have, no chemistry, even though I didn't mind Kate Mulgrew as Catherine Janeway. I think she did a good job. She was tough, but she was still feminine, so she didn't lose that aspect of herself. So I thought it was a good balance. But the rest of the crew was very hit and miss with each character.
Yeah.
There's not even she's not perfect, like the captain. But, I think universally, maybe most people like the Doctor the most. And, he's definitely interesting. But even then, I'm still not sold on any character as a whole.
Yeah.
And there's good episodes for each character.
Well, there are good episodes on the series.
On the show, there's definitely many episodes that are good to average, maybe a few that are very excellent. Like they're up there with the best of Trek. But overall, it's just not strong enough.
It's not. The performances are very poor. The characters are all underwritten. I like the Doctor as well. I think if I had to say who my favorite was, I think I'd have to pick the Doctor. And he was kind of funny because he was such a dick. And it's funny to imagine that, like, why is the holographic Doctor a dick?
Yeah.
But it's kind of fun.
It's like House on Star Trek.
He was House. So that was good. I think that Tuvok is pretty universally derided. I did like Tuvok.
Neelix is the worst.
Neelix is the worst.
And the worst episode was Tuvix.
Oh, man.
Where they were a hybrid.
That was God. Like, how stupid.
Do you know that's the inspiration for Shatko?
Well, it's a you, I guess, man. And then when 7 of 9 came along, it was such pandering to, I don't know what, like, just because I'm a Star Trek nerd, does that mean that, like, you think I don't know what boobs look like, so you got to give it to me in a Borg package? Is that the message you're sending?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think, part of the reasoning there, right?
And then she took over the show.
But I did enjoy parts of her character.
I actually did, too.
But, and she did have some solid episodes. But yeah, she just came in and the show was just about her and Jane.
It was just
everybody
about her.
else was just took a back seat, and it wasn't an ensemble anymore.
No, it was the 7 of 9 show. And I mean, I thought Jerry Ryan actually did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
As best she could with wearing that ridiculous outfit. It's a little jarring given the context.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, why does the Borg need high heels? The skin tight outfit, I guess, like, you could argue some kind of freedom of mobility bullshit or something, but a Borg doesn't need high heels. But I thought they developed that character better than any of the other characters in the end.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a shame. Well, those are my thoughts on the series. What's your opinion of Voyager? We'll get into Enterprise maybe in a sec, but how's Voyager for you?
Yeah, I would say exactly what you said. Unique concept. I think the concept started off good. I even liked the pilot. It's fairly decent. And I liked elements of sabotage, like they had the Maquis and the crew was trying to work together, and then a couple of crew members didn't like it there, and then they turned on them, or what was it, Seska? That was the name?
Yeah, the engineer,
so
Cardassian spy, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I liked some of some of these concepts, and I think it led into a couple of good episodes, but then I think it just lost its way. It was just too much of, individual episodic episodes, and it just kind of went nowhere, and you can't do that without a strong cast.
Right.
Strong writing, and you're just raping similar episodes of what's come before on TNG in the original series.
Mm-hmm.
So when they were trying to do something different, and they had that, as I was talking about, inner conflict and conflict with other species, and that sabotage stuff that was happening, it was good, but then I just think that, they just lost it along the way. It just wasn't strong enough, and you can't have weaker episodes in a weaker show without a strong cast that you really love. You don't really love anybody in this show. So that's part of the problem.
A good cast probably could have made that show work, or much better writing with that cast, and it probably could have worked. But without either one, no.
Yeah, no, agree.
Nothing to be done.
And I have a similar beef with Enterprise. So if we just want to roll into Enterprise.
Yeah, let's roll into Enterprise.
Same problem there. I think I don't mind Bakula. Hated everybody else. Terrible. That is the worst cast. It's worse than Voyager. They are terrible. Absolutely atrocious. That's my opinion.
I mean, I somewhat agree. I really wanted to like Scott Bakula because I'm a big Quantum Leap fan. He was. I've watched the series. I did watch it. I think 2 years ago was the most recent. I did a run through on Netflix, and I found that I enjoyed it a little bit more today than I did when it was on originally. Unfortunately, I think Scott Bakula might have been miscast for that particular character, the way he was written. And you're right. The rest of the cast is terrible. They're absolutely terrible.
Like the pilot, the linguistics officer, even the weapons guy. And I think I remember talking to you about this before. You like, what's his name? Tuck? Fucking cowboy. Trip, the cowboy engineer.
Oh, he's terrible.
He's terrible. And then you had the fucking Vulcan bitch, right? So she was terrible too. So I mean,
she was pretty bad as well.
So you don't have any strong players for Bakula to play off of, whether he was miscast or not. I do still like him, but it just, without that anybody else there to cheer for or that's interesting. It was like, they got so many actors that felt like this was their first acting experience on the show.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, way too inexperienced. I felt really bad for the pilot. I don't even remember the guy's name. Poor bastard.
Like the black guy.
Oh, was he black? I didn't notice.
It has nothing to do with him being black. It's just, I think it's just, I don't know the names.
Like, I don't remember the poor bastard's name. I mean,
he's fucking cannon fodder for all I care.
He was basically the red shirt who never got killed.
Yeah, essentially.
And why did they even bother having the guy on there if they weren't going to give him any lines, any story? And even when they did, I'm sorry, he can't act. He can't act. And when you have an actor who can't act, but your writing better be fucking pristine. Very similar problems to Voyager in that you don't have actors and you don't have writers. You don't have much of a TV show.
Yeah.
Again, concept-wise, is solid.
Yeah, I think concept-wise it was okay. And as we mentioned before, I think by making it slightly a bit more mainstream, they might have had more success if you planted something like that today. Like, if this is interesting. Is this what Discovery is going to be, right? Like, is it going to be a very similar type of show as Enterprise? Because I'm assuming it's going to be set between Enterprise and the original series.
I was under the impression, now I don't know for sure, I was under the impression that it takes place during the original series.
The only reason why I am saying before is what people are saying on the internet is the designation lettering on the on the ship.
Yeah, the registry number.
Registry number. Yeah, it's so much earlier than 1701. This is 1031, so that it's got to be way before, not way before, but set definitely before Kirk's time.
Yeah, well, we just don't. I mean, originally I'd heard that it takes place after Undiscovered Country.
That's interesting, but then they wouldn't have a registry number. I don't know.
The registry numbers they're not chronological in any sense.
I don't know. That's what people were saying. So regardless, if I'd prefer it to be after Undiscovered Country personally.
Well, it's a period they haven't really explored.
Yeah, and I think that's a more interesting time because they're trying to reach peace with the Klingons, but they might not have gotten there yet. So there's a lot of interesting stories that can happen during that time period.
I agree. I think that would be the best time period to set it in. It's really difficult to tell from what we know about it right now to say for sure. It would be very difficult to set it between Enterprise and I think it would be very difficult to set it at any period between Enterprise and the end of the original series. I think it would, just from a design perspective, that'd be very difficult.
You're falling into similar trappings that Enterprise did, right? So it's probably better that you you get yourself more creative freedom if you do it after the original movies are done.
Yeah.
So how about maybe before we go into, I would like to talk a tiny bit more about Discovery, but how about we just get into quick chat about the original movies and the TNG movies, and then maybe we can talk quickly about the reboots. So what are your favorites? Like, what are your thoughts on the original movies there?
I mean, if we lump everything together, I think as a whole, so first I'll just talk about the original, like 1 through 6, the original cast films. My favorite out of those, and I think it's the best one for representing what the original series is about, is Star Trek 6, Undiscovered Country. That's my favorite. And, of course, Wrath of Khan's right up there. What I think is interesting is how poorly received a lot of them are. And that would be 1, 3, and 5 are the ones that are generally...
Well, 5 deserves it.
5 deserves it.
Even though there's entertaining aspects to 5? that if you love the characters, you'll enjoy aspects of 5.
Yeah,
Right? But
there's
as a movie, it's definitely in terrible movie territory.
It is, and that's kind of what you get. I mean, what does William Shatner know about making a movie?
Well,
It's what does God need with the Starship? What does William Shatner need with a directorial credit? Not a goddamn thing.
Not a goddamn thing. And he was only doing it because Nimoy got to do it for 3 and 4. So
3 and 4, yeah.
That's pretty much what's going on there. But the movie itself was just bad.
It's pretty bad, but it's got enough that I could still watch it and I'm entertained. It's terrible, but I like watching it. But 1 and 3. I think 1 is really good. I think the originals is a very good movie, and I don't think it's as well regarded as it deserves to be. It's very Star Trek.
I love the motion picture. Very underrated film.
Yeah.
And it tried to be Star Trek's answer to 2001: A Space Odyssey. And in my opinion, except for some terrible pacing problems when they're just fucking staring at the fucking patterns in space. Someone was fucking high doing this movie.
Oh yeah.
I think it was a very solid science fiction movie on its own. I think so.
I agree. I think it's a very solid science fiction movie, and it's
a great Star Trek movie. Like when you talk about what is Star Trek, this is Star Trek the motion picture, literally.
Yeah.
When you think about it. And it's the spirit of the original series right here, wrapped perfectly in a 2.5-hour movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it to death. I think it's not just a great science fiction movie, but the characters, the leap from the show to the big screen is such an incredible difference. Like the visuals, the score, even the acting is very good for the most part.
I think I agree. I mean, what a task that was to try to translate what we saw in the late 60s to that. I mean, the design aesthetic is totally different. The actors are so much older, and yet it still feels like such a natural extension of what we saw. It's like
they didn't miss a beat. And they captured it kind of perfectly, like they were kind of in different places in their lives. And
I love that.
Yeah, and they felt it felt so natural for them to be different yet the same. And I think it's a credit to the acting.
I think it's a credit. I mean, it's a credit to the actors. I think it's a credit as well to the writers for doing it. And it didn't go smoothly.
Nope.
Like they all came back together, and it didn't go well. I thought that was fantastic. I mean, Kirk's got to take command of the Enterprise, and Decker he's not cool with it.
No.
That was a great beat to throw in there. Because that's exactly what would happen.
He's actually a really good new character to have in a movie there. I actually like Decker a lot.
I liked him too. I thought he was a good addition. And again, very, very Star Trek. It was a very Star Trek thing to do to have him go off at the end as well. Sort of shades of
Riker and Troy, right? So,
well,
I mean, that's the inspiration for Riker.
That was the inspiration, yeah. So great, yeah. I don't know why everybody. Well, I think I know why people hate it. I mean, it's very cerebral. It's slow.
I think it's because it's slow. Because the problem here is the timing. This movie was not possible until Star Wars came out.
That's true.
The success of Star Wars, said, this is Shatner saying this actually just recently in the Vegas convention. He was saying, I read an article of him talking about Star Wars, and he said, if it wasn't for Star Wars, Star Trek would never have come back. And it's true. Yep. Because as soon as Star Wars happened, the studio heads at Paramount saying, we need a IP that can match Star Wars. What do we have? What do we have that we already own? And it was Star Trek.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get that to the big screen.
Yeah.
Star Trek is not Star Wars. So the idiots at Paramount don't understand that, even though credit is given for at least greenlighting the fucking thing and giving a second chance so Wrath of Khan can come out. And that explains why Wrath of Khan is kind of Wrath of Khan. But it's not the same as Star Wars. It's not mainstream. It's not actiony. And it's supposed to be cerebral. And because this particular episode had some pacing issues, definitely was really slow. I tried showing this to my cousin last year. He got through it, but man, he was on his phone for after 20, 30 minutes. He was hooked for the first 20 minutes. He was saying, oh, this is good. And he actually didn't mind the rest of the movies. He'd never seen this one because I kind of told him it was slower. So I kind of forced him down to watch it. And he was into it for about a good 20, 25 minutes. After that, he checked out.
Yeah.
For younger people just to get into this movie, it's hard. because it is just too slow.
Yeah, and it is slow.
Yeah, but I mean, you can say the same thing about 2001. It's a very slow movie. It's all cerebral.
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's fair to. I mean, 2001's 2001. I mean,
no, it's a brilliant movie. That's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
The best movie ever made.
Yeah, you could make the argument. Yeah. Well, okay. So, what are your thoughts? So, give me your rundown of the original movies.
Well, I'll give you rankings later. I mean, I'll just say this about the originals. I mean, the original 6 with the original crew is the strengths of the ones that work more than the ones that don't, are when they're tackling an issue with Kirk, Spock, and Bones together. Because that's really the strength of the original series and their relationships with each other. And that goes to just the motion picture as well. The motion picture mainly works because those 3 work. And those relationships work too, right? Along with it being a good science fiction movie, but that movie is carried by those 3 characters and their relationships with each other. And that goes without saying for the other ones. Now, it's the same thing when you talk about the other ones, but when you have the social commentary of The Undiscovered Country or the personal relationships in Wrath of Khan, I mean, those are why those movies work. Search for Spock, the strengths of Search for Spock work because of, again, the close relationships between Kirk, Spock, and Bones, and friendship, and loyalty, and family. Going back to what I mentioned about the strengths of Trek, especially the original series, that's what hooked me, and I think that's really what hooked everybody. Because the original series, even though it's very influential, they tackled social commentary, it wouldn't have lasted without that brotherly bond between those 3 characters. And that's what works with the first 6 movies, in my opinion. Now, you have the strengths and weaknesses of each, and we can get into that maybe at the end.
Yeah.
But how about TNG? How about the TNG movies? Like, did they make a good transition from television to film?
I thought that they did make a good transition from television to film. It was obviously a very fast turnaround where we got, the same year that Next Generation went off the air. The first movie came out, same year. So we're jumping right back in where we left off. Generations, again, I think while it has its problems, I think is also an underrated film. I love how Generations looks. I mean, I love how they lit that movie. It was great lighting on the Enterprise. It was so different, and it was awesome. Yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, a lot of the characters were underserved. They didn't have a whole lot to do, which, I mean, when you have that big a cast in a 90 to 120 minute movie, you're definitely going to get characters who are underserved, and that's too bad. These scenes with Kirk and Picard together, I thought played well. They had good chemistry together on screen. I think where Generations really suffers is the stakes aren't high enough.
See, I don't know about that. I would disagree with that sentiment. I think we have a great villain. Probably maybe my 3rd favorite villain, maybe even 2nd favorite villain in all of the Trek features, and with Malcolm McDowell here.
Yeah, no, I like Malcolm McDowell
as Zoran, and I like the fact that even though you don't know who these people are, I mean, he's going to destroy a whole system. It's just they have to stop him. I think the stakes are there. I mean, billions of people's lives are going to be lost if they allow this to happen. Even though it's not a personal connection, because that's why, Wrath of Khan works so well, why First Contact works so well, why Undiscovered Country works so well. These are better movies because the personal stakes are there a little bit more. But I still think Generations is still very strong because even though you're saying the stakes aren't there, they're just not personal stakes.
But that's kind of the thing, is either the stakes have to be big, because I know I should care about some random civilization of pre-industrialized humanoids, but I don't. And I mean, I might if they had made me care, but if they had done something to help me care, but they just told me that there was a civilization of pre-industrialized humanoids on this planet.
I understand what you mean.
Without giving me why I give a shit, because there's billions of those civilizations out there. But if the stakes, if they were more personal otherwise, then okay, then that's fine. Then it would have elevated what was happening. Lots of great character moments here. Patrick Stewart had some excellent moments dealing with the death of his family.
They just had to give Troy something to do.
They had to give Troy something to do, exactly. At least they gave her something to do. What did they give Crusher to do?
Nothing.
fucking nothing.
Yeah.
But I like the film overall. I think it's paced very well. Like I said, it looks good. I think they shot the shit out of it. Data's emotional journey had kind of its ups and downs, but okay, it was okay. Brent Spiner, I thought, handled it well enough. So, so the transition was a little bit rocky. I didn't like how the Enterprise kind of went down like a bitch after getting through all of the harrowing situations for 7 years. And it's like, couple shots from a 20-year-old bird of prey and down. I don't care that they have the shield frequencies, down it goes. I mean, and I know they obviously were probably setting up so they could get a new ship and then after. But
that's pretty much it.
It's things like that showed how rushed it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard I heard Ronald Moore talking about this on a comment. He was doing a commentary for one of the episodes. In fact, I think it was his commentary on yesterday's Enterprise, talking about how rushed production was on Generations to just trying to get the script right. They actually did work on a script for a fair amount of time, and they just couldn't get it right. And they looked back and thought, geez, I wish we hadn't done yesterday's Enterprise, because that's the
perfect. And I think that's the one problem is Generations. It's just, when I think of Generations, even though I still mainly enjoy the film, all I really think of is missed opportunity.
Yeah, big time.
You don't have to do yesterday's Enterprise. You could come up, even though that's a good starting point, you could have come up with a different story that would have brought the whole cruise and the two ships together. Because, and this is kind of, maybe we can move into, after maybe a quick discussion about the TNG films, is one of the problems I have with the reboots is they don't really treat the Enterprise as a character or give it anything to do of value. It's not home to anybody. There's no attachment to the ship. Ship doesn't do shit. The captain doesn't have any relationship to the ship, because Kirk's love for the Enterprise. Picard's love for his ship. It's evident in many scenes throughout the shows and the films. And yeah, you can argue that, okay, the new movies only have 3 movies and these other ones have all these episodes of TV to kind of express that. But when you think about just those little moments of Kirk looking at the ship at the beginning of the motion picture on a shuttle ride, or Captain Picard just seeing the empty bridge, and you get feelings, you get that, you sense that attachment and his love, and he doesn't even want to lose the Enterprise E as well. He goes through that as well. You get these kind of relationships between the captain and his ship. You don't get, or even the crew in the ship. You don't get that in the reboots. And that's one of my beefs with the reboots as it is. But we'll get into that in a second. So we talked about Generations. How about, we know we can't do justice to the strengths of First Contact. It's a great film. How about, where did the Next Gen go wrong with Insurrection and Nemesis? How about you briefly touch upon that?
Okay, yeah, well, for sure. I mean, I just want to say Star Trek First Contact, and I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're good.
Because First Contact, I mean...
Yeah, we don't need to talk about it.
No, we don't need to talk about it.
It's good. Yeah, it's a great film.
It's good. Well, I think, so if we talk about Nemesis, not a bad concept. I really enjoyed the idea that we're going to explore the implications of the Prime Directive from the perspective that they did.
You mean Insurrection?
Right, Insurrection. Sorry. the idea that the Prime Directive doesn't apply because these people aren't indigenous to this planet, and and plus we can use this planet for our own selfish reasons, and so all of that was really interesting. A lot of the problems come in with the idea that I think it was the cast and maybe Patrick, so they wanted to do a film that was a little bit lighter hearted, where they could have a little bit more fun. And it came off as stupid. They didn't serve the characters very well. Everybody was goofy. They had the bathtub scene with Frakes and Marina Sirtis just didn't fit. Data acting like a child was
a step back.
It was a real step back, exactly.
Yeah.
And they tried to explore Picard and give him a lady friend to hang out with. It just didn't play right. I don't know the actor's name, but the evil Starfleet admiral was pretty good, and he comes after a long line of evil Star Trek admirals. Everybody used an admiral in Star Trek.
Even then, he didn't go the whole distance of being evil.
No, he didn't. it just kind of sucked. Like, it was sort of meh,
No, I agree. In the end, I love the concept of the film, and I think that as a starting point makes an excellent movie. Problem is the execution and the details surrounding everything, including the action. F. Murray Abraham is a good actor, but he's no supervillain, should I say. He wasn't cast well for this part, in my opinion.
No, he wasn't. No.
He's a very good actor, and I mean, in Amadeus, he plays an excellent villain, like Oscar worthy, right? You think he won the Oscar, but he wasn't. He felt like he didn't belong in Star Trek. He just wasn't well suited, and he wasn't given the right writing and the right script, and I think just the action set pieces itself, like the complete execution of this movie. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened, especially after First Contact. I don't know how Frakes went from that to this.
Yeah, because
strange.
It was very strange because Frakes showed. I mean, there were some techniques he used in First Contact that were a little on the amateurish side, but overall, he pulled off a very, very good Star Trek movie. A very good movie.
But it's tight here,
and it's tight,
and it's not tight here.
It's not tight.
Yeah,
the action scenes don't hold together very well, and the humor
falls flat.
It's cheap. They go for cheap jokes as opposed to the humor should come from the characters. Like, the characters have lots of funny moments throughout the entire series. Mm-hmm. They have good timing, and Riker can crack a joke and it makes sense for the character and it's fine. But Picard can't crack a joke because he doesn't crack jokes. But that doesn't mean he can't be funny, but he doesn't crack jokes. And Worf doesn't crack jokes either. It all fell totally flat. And it's like I don't know who has the screenwriting credit on it. I don't know if Frakes wrote it. I don't think he did. But they just didn't. I mean, that's fine if they wanted to make a movie that was funnier. I mean, if you watch Star Trek 4, for example, which is kind of the one everybody references when we talk about a funny Star Trek movie, they're not cracking wise. They're just fish out of water. It's funny because
exactly, fish out of water, but they're still true to their characters.
Exactly,
right? And that's they haven't dumbed them down, right? They're just exactly. It's just like they're funny because they completely in an environment they know nothing about. Fish out of water.
Yeah, and
that's where the humor comes from.
Yeah, but the characters are still them.
Yeah,
yeah. So
all the characters they look like they were back in their first season tropes again.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's a real shame. It's a real shame.
Yeah, well, I agree. And then Nemesis is just, I think, again, they said, okay, that didn't work. We got to have an action movie.
Well, they're like, we got to do our Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, we got to do our Wrath of Khan, and we need to have our send off with Data, even though he dies, but he can still come back with the stupid B4 plot. But I thought it was, and I'll get to this word, is insulting. Because, it's very contrived. You're having plot coincidences. Oh, I'm traveling through warp speed. I'm not even looking for it, but, there's a positronic signal. I mean,
on some random planet, on the neutral zone. Like,
I mean, oh my God. Is this really the best you guys can come up with? Come on. Like, this is just stupid.
Very stupid.
Yeah. And then, unfortunately, Tom Hardy, before he was Tom Hardy, even though I think he didn't do that bad of a job, but the story surrounding him being a Picard clone, I didn't like it. I thought it was pretty stupid. Totally stupid.
You're right. Insulting, I think, is the right word here. Again, the humor that they try to play for in some of the scenes isn't natural from the characters.
There was a subtle joke. Classic TNG banter is like when Data's trying to decipher all those symbols so they can escape, and he's just kind of fascinated by the whole thing, and he's talking about it to Picard, but they need to get out. They're in a bind, right? And they're being shot at, but Picard's telling him, hurry it up, right? Don't have time for that. And I actually enjoyed some of those kind of humor. I thought they were trying to get back to who these characters really are and those relationships. And I liked that, but there's just too many problems in this movie. It's not a good action movie. It looks good. I think the budget this movie looked excellent. It was filmed very well in terms of production value. It's just, unfortunately, the pieces weren't there.
No, the pieces weren't there. I mean, Picard driving the dune buggy. I mean, the whole B4 thing. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, no, I know.
Come on. It was flat out insulting, terrible. You're right. Tom Hardy did fine with what he was given. Terrible concept. Well, I guess they probably could have made the concept of an evil Romulanized Picard clone work. I don't know.
I like the idea of Romulans, and it's just like, why weren't they just Romulans? Why do you have to fucking make it Romulans and then all of a sudden they're taken over by these fucking Remans?
Yeah, that's
so
right.
Stupid.
Yeah, that was stupid.
You had a great
give me the Romulans. I don't care about these Remans.
The Romulans were built up all the way through the series as an adversary.
Yeah.
And then you get this. It's ridiculous. It's so stupid.
It was stupid. And that's why this is my most hated of all of the films that bear Star Trek in its title. I just can't, I can't abide. I cannot abide.
Okay, so how about, this is a good segue. Let's get into the reboots, the three movies. I did see Beyond, even though I said my claim to fame was I will never watch this movie because I was so insulted by Into Darkness. But I did see it, not through other certain means, but I did see it. So how about we just talk about New Trek as a whole, and maybe we can touch about Beyond because that's the latest.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the reboot so far?
Yeah, I mean, I'm generally positive, if not very excited. I was very excited in the lead up to Star Trek 09 because it was nice to know that Star Trek had life again. The reboot was I was mixed on the idea of it, but the trailers were looking, just talk about the excitement leading up. The trailers were looking good, and I had an open mind about it. And, overall, I think that they did a pretty good job with casting. Not a great job, but a pretty good job. I don't think anybody was terrible. I think that, as far as anybody being miscast, probably Simon Pegg, who I know you're a huge fan of, was probably the most miscast. Or at least he kind of hammed it up more than was really necessary for the role. And I'm a fan of his, but he's very jarring to me in that role. I think he overdoes it. But Carl Urban as Bones, great choice there. It certainly dumbs Star Trek down. There's nothing intellectual going on in any of these three films at all, but it does have a lot of heart. It does have, I feel, that sense of family that you were talking about. But certainly the Enterprise isn't home. But that's part of they actually haven't lived on it. I mean, it's a new ship, it's a new crew. The Enterprise, I think, doesn't get enough to do in Into Darkness and in Star Trek Beyond. I thought the Enterprise had a couple good moments in the first one, though, like kind of at the end of the climax when the Romulan ship is chasing Spock in the
they come in
little time ship, and then the Enterprise warps in, and
it has its Han Solo moment at the end there.
I guess so. And obviously, with JJ's influences being more Star Wars than Star Trek, but I still love the moment. I think it was exciting. The opening of Star Trek 09 is one of my favorite openings of
any Trek film.
Yeah, I mean,
I remember I was excited because Trek was back. I agree. I didn't like the fact that they chose. Maybe I'll save this comment for the end. But the thing about New Trek that I can sum up in one word is insulting. It is a very insulting interpretation to what Star Trek is. And that's my main beef with it. Is there a sense of fun in these movies? Yes. High tempo, high energy, but that's just, you could say the same thing about the Fast and the Furious franchise. So they have dumbed down Star Trek to be mainstream so it can survive. Understand, but I still think you need to have the true understanding and respect of the material of what makes Star Trek work. Social commentary, relationships, family. You mentioned you get a sense of family with these characters. I do not. Absolutely do not. These are completely a new, complete interpretation of who these characters are. And I also feel they don't have the respect of the material or the technology. Everything is contrived and very convenient. Let's talk about, I can transport from planet to planet without knowing coordinates. I can transport from a ship to one that's in warp, from a stationary planet to, I have no idea where the coordinates are, but I'll get there, right? So these are just plot conveniences just to get the movie going because they don't want to dumb it down with technobabble. and they want to keep them moving so fast. This is an issue with J.J. Abrams, and unfortunately, he was completely the wrong director to get his hands on Star Trek, in my opinion. I think if you put this in a more capable director's hands, we'd be sitting in a completely different world. Would it be as successful? I don't know. I think if you still find the right balance of excitement, escapism being mainstream, but you're treating the IP with respect, and they're not doing that right now. And that's what I hate the most. And now you talk about Conblood, you could talk about, Captain Kirk, he can't graduate, but he's the captain of the Enterprise, and a few hours later, these are the kind of things that just make me shake my head and saying, what the fuck is this shit? This is just something I see on CW. It's not just because they're young. It's the stupidity behind the whole thing. And that's what I cannot understand. And then you talk about the raping of scenes in Into Darkness, which is a completely insulting take on everything. That movie was just terrible. The one thing I did like about Beyond, if you want to go to Beyond, is that they actually started going back to the roots of Star Trek and saying, what is Trek about? And they started an attempt to tackle some of that. And you might get some elements of them working as a team, working together, forging some relationships with each other. I think it was a little stronger in that one, even though it was still a weaker story and a weak villain. That's Beyond. But that's my take. What did you think of Beyond?
Yeah, weak villain in Beyond. There's no question about that. A real shame, too, because Idris Elba's pretty good. He can be pretty menacing.
He can be menacing, but you know what? Honestly, I think there's some fascination with Idris Elba that I just do not understand. I think he's a very overrated actor.
Well, have you watched him in anything?
I've seen him in Luther. He's okay. But
he's pretty good, man.
He's good, but I don't think he's that good. He's not as good as everybody makes him out to believe.
Well, that's a different topic. He wasn't given anything to do either.
No,
he's buried under all that makeup for most of the film, and it's a pretty one-dimensional villain, unfortunately. So he's not up there. It's good. I mean, they played it very safe in this movie. You're right there. It was it felt more traditional for like kind of a run-of-the-mill original series episode.
Yeah.
And it's good. And they didn't have any of the magic science that they did in the first two, like transporters that make starships obsolete and immortality serums and so forth. You're right about, that stuff was ridiculous. So I'm glad they didn't do any of that kind of bullshit here. I kind of liked some of the throwbacks to Star Trek Enterprise that they threw out in Star Trek Beyond. That was kind of cool. Even though Enterprise isn't all that highly regarded, it does show a connection to the source material a little bit. So that was pretty cool. It was fine. I enjoyed the movie. I didn't love it. It was not insulting, at least.
It wasn't insulting, but it just felt, unfortunately, it felt mainstream, but it didn't feel epic enough.
Yes, exactly. It wasn't epic enough. It was just kind of, it was okay. It was okay.
It was too bad that this wasn't the second movie, because maybe the third one could have been even better. Well, the one thing about these three movies so far, as I mentioned before, is I still don't think that they have treated the character of the Enterprise right. I'm not talking about the Apple Store bridge and that kind of bullshit. I mean, even though I'm not a fan of the design, I can let it go because you got to modernize it. I'm talking about just the ship. They're not doing anything with this ship. It's just there.
No, it doesn't do anything from a design perspective. I like the look of it. The sets. I think the bridge looks cool. I like the concept of engineering being an industrial looking
microbrewery
set. The brewery, the Budweiser brewery, which is really weird, but I like the industrial look of it.
I hate it, but that's just me.
The ship, you're right. The ship doesn't get enough to do, and in
3 movies it has hardly been there.
Yeah, well, 2 movies in a bit, because it got blowed the fuck up in the first act of the third one.
And again, these are moments that need to be earned.
Well,
whether you're talking about a movie franchise or not, this is something that's supposed to be fairly epic. And again, it didn't come off across as epic.
It wasn't. It's almost like they are scared of setting the movie in outer space.
Yeah.
And if you don't have it in outer space, then you're not going to have any moments for the Enterprise to shine.
Yeah. So, this is the problem with these 3 movies. That's one of the problems. I'm also not a huge fan of the cast. I mean, I think Carl Urban's the strongest out of the bunch. Chris Pine's okay. I'm glad he's not doing Shatner, but I really don't know what he's really bringing to the table.
No, he's just bringing leading man to the table.
He's not a leading man. He's just chumple.
But that's what that's all he's not playing Captain Kirk. He's playing young, dashing leading man. Yeah, that's the character he's playing.
Yeah. And another thing about the movie so far is I understand that there has to be an arc for, because, young Kirk was different than, like, anyone who knows the history, reading books or reading information about the character. Young Kirk was a bookworm in their prime timeline, and then he was a brash, different guy as Captain Kirk. Whereas Picard was more of when he was younger, he wasn't as much of a bookworm, and then he grew up to be a bookworm. Completely different. So I understand that people, when they're young, they're different, but the transition, we're seeing him from when he's getting his command, right? In the original one, and in these next movies here, and he hasn't grown. And he's still the same douchebag that he was in the first one as he is now. He that's how he comes across. Through his body language, through his tone. He has no sense of real authority over anybody. And he's very unsure of himself consistently. And I even hear, he's just a guy with daddy issues, and I guess that's going to happen in the next one, because they're announcing that, if they do a Star Trek 4, it's going to be about him as his dad. So there's timelines around. So, and I don't even want to get into that. I mean, I just don't have a lot of faith. I'm not really a fan of this interpretation of Trek, even though if this is what it needed to be to get me a Star Trek TV series, so be it.
Well, and it is. This is exactly, if they didn't do it, they wouldn't have done it at all if they didn't do it like this. Like, it was going to be action, adventure, or it was going to be no Star Trek.
Yeah, no, so that's fine. So I've accepted it for what it is, and that's my take on this new Trek. I'm not a fan. I don't think there's a lot, even though I love the opening of Trek 9, and I think Trek 9 as a whole is a fun ride, and I love the production value of the first one, especially that opening is amazing. But aside from that, I really am not a fan of what I have seen. It's lost me completely. So much so that for 40 years, Trek has been a part of my life pretty much since I was learned to talk. And this is the first Star Trek movie Beyond that I did not want to even see. Even as shitty as some of the other movies have been, like Insurrection or Final Frontier or Nemesis or whatever it would be, I would have still watched further iterations. But Into Darkness was just something that just said, you know what, I'm done. And I can't believe a Trek movie made me think that way.
So what you're saying is you want to give J.J. Abrams a big hug and buy him a beer and tell him how awesome he is.
That guy needs to get worked hard. And I'm not exact fan of what he did with Force Awakens, as we talked about. Similar issues with that movie as it is with these new Trek movies. He comes across as a guy who says he really, truly understands the concept and the IP, but I really don't think he does.
Well, shall we talk a little bit about the future then of Star Trek? You want to get into that portion now? We can talk a bit about the new series that's coming and maybe other concepts of what the future of Trek holds.
Yeah, as we kind of hinted at already with Star Trek Discovery, depending on the timeline it's going to be on, but I'm a bit scared. So much is hinging on the success of this show for Trek to continue, because I think mainstream audiences are getting tired of this new Trek series. The box office for Beyond is not doing as hot as the other ones, and there's not even a guarantee you'll get a fourth one if the box office is the way it is. Yeah. So it's really this, and that's it. And if this doesn't work, I really think you're going to see maybe another 10 to 20 years of no Trek if this thing doesn't fly. Mm-hmm. And that's what scares me. So what are your thoughts on the CBS all streaming or all access or what that bullshit is?
Well, a huge mistake on CBS's part. I can't believe they would be so naive to do this. I don't think that they want Star Trek to fail. I really don't, because I think if they did, they just why would we even bring it back in the first place? They think it's going to be a hit. They think it's going to be a hit, and because of the box office of the new Trek, and hardcore Trekkies will definitely do whatever. Right, but the problem is that you're not going to hit a new mainstream fans or fans that aren't knowledgeable about Star Trek and they want to get into it. They're going to say, I got to pay to see this? Fuck that. Exactly. And it'd be one thing if the subscription service was desirable or attractive, but it's not. Like, why would I pay? I mean, a subscription to the CBS All Access is almost as much as a subscription to Hulu or Netflix. But on Hulu and Netflix, I can get everything. Yeah. On CBS All Access, I can get CBS shows. And CBS shows fucking suck. They're terrible. And CBS is the only, like, they're like, no, we're not going to get into this whole Netflix Hulu thing. That doesn't make any sense.
So sorry to interrupt. Isn't this still going to be on Netflix, though? Except in the States?
Not in Canada or the United States.
Oh, so stupid.
Those are the markets. Like the North American market, the American market is where they hang. It's not like movies, right? Where they look more for the international audience now. American TV shows are made for American audiences, and the American market is where they make the money.
Yeah.
So they did sign a deal with Netflix to stream it outside of North America, but in the United States, it's going to be on CBS All Access.
So how is this going to work? Because usually on Netflix, like say House of Cards, right?
Yeah.
Or Daredevil or something like that, like Netflix-owned shows, produced shows, they stream once the show goes on Netflix, you can watch all the episodes.
Right.
Is that what they're going to do here?
No, I don't.
Or it's going to get updated on a weekly basis.
Yeah, it'll be updated. There are a few shows on Netflix where Netflix has signed a deal with the originating network. So, for example, the El Rey network in the United States, and they have the show From Dusk Till Dawn based on that old shitty movie from Robert Rodriguez. It's only available outside of the U.S. on Netflix. But because it's a weekly show, Netflix will update it. Like in Canada, you watch it on Netflix, but it's a weekly show still. So every week you get a new episode. Mm. So that's how they'll do it outside of North America. So it's not going to be like the 13 episodes straight up.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that because I was always wondering that. I'm saying, well, I mean, yeah, all these other shows, am I going to be able to watch it all at once? I mean, yeah. So no, this makes more sense.
Yeah. I mean, NBC toyed with this, with that show Aquarius last summer, I think, with David Duchovny. Not sure how that worked out, but because the CBS All Access doesn't give me any added value, do I want to watch the entire back catalog of CSI Miami?
Yeah, exactly.
Give me a fucking break.
I agree with you. This is mistake number one. And you're not going to reach as many viewers, but maybe they're saying the money that they're going to generate from this will make up from some of the lack of viewership that they're going to get. This is a gamble. Instead of it being free and everybody watching and they're only dependent on Nielsen ratings and advertisements and points based on that, and the revenue generated off those point system, maybe they're saying they'll just generate the revenue from hardcore Trekkies, and that'll be almost equivalent to what they would get from points, from additional viewership. I
hope that's true. And maybe they're outsmarting me on this one, and I hope that that's the case because, because I would pay for it.
I won't.
You will or you won't?
I will not.
You will not?
Nope.
I won't either because I won't have to.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I was in the U.S., I would.
Yes.
You love Italian.
No. It's your way.
Fortunately we'll be in a better situation here, but it is a curious decision on their part. Now, that being said, I am happy with the talent that they brought on board, Nicholas Meyer and Brian Fuller. So I think that they've got good creatives involved in the show. Again, we had a bit of a discussion on what the timeline is going to be, and we don't know yet. And there's lots of timelines that, it's obviously going to be pre-Next Generation. That much is clear from the design aesthetic there. If you could, we'll just be fanboys for a second here, Harry. If you could pick any time frame, if you were making the next Star Trek series, when would you set it, and what would your concept be for the show?
Oh my God. It is so hard to say. I think I would still honestly stick with what we mentioned is the post-Undiscovered Country, pre-TNG era, because there's a lot of interesting conflicts and stories that can be told there. I think that's where I would put my money, but the fanboy in me still would love to see a post-TNG, like right after TNG. And I'd love to get cameos from the original, from the TNG or even DS9 Or if I have to say Voyager cast. As long as Neelix isn't in it.
Ugh.
But I mean, come on. Wouldn't you just love to see Patrick Stewart play Captain Picard one more time?
Yes, I would.
It doesn't matter, even how old he is. And I think he could pull it off.
Oh, he still looks pretty good.
He still looks pretty good. I watched him in Green Room, a movie actually with Anton Yelchin, one of his last movies. Okay movie, but both actors did a very good job, but Patrick Stewart's still amazing. I think he can really pull it off. He still looks young enough for his age to get back in that suit and get back in that chair. I really think so.
I'd love to see that entire crew give it one more kick at the can. Even Brent Spiner looks fine, and LeVar Burton looks good. Michael Dorn looks good. I haven't seen Marina Sirtis or Gates McFadden in a while, so they were never. Take a look at the whole crew. They were never sold on being young and hot. It doesn't really matter too much.
Yeah. And I think Jonathan Frakes would have to get, shuffle his way from the buffet table as well. As he does his slanted walk, right?
Yeah, as he does his slanted walk. He's always been a pretty big guy. Funny story. You talk about the slanted walk. Just as an aside, I know we're kind of talking about other things, but when I was at the convention in town here, so this was the year of it was the 25th anniversary of Next Generation, which I guess would have been 4 years ago now. So the first time that the entire Next Generation cast got together again was at that convention here for the 25th anniversary. So they were all here, which was awesome. And so I went to a panel. Frakes, Marina Sirtis, and Michael Dorn was the three of them. And what was funny was that these panels always have a moderator, right? They have a guy who comes out, introduces them, and will lob a couple questions at him. It's a volunteer event, I guess, but I don't know what happened to the moderator. He never showed up. So Frakes, Sirtis, and Dorn, they just come out and just started winging it because there wasn't anybody to introduce them. There wasn't anybody to set the stage, to ask questions, to moderate audience questions or anything. They just came out and started winging it. Oh. Marina Sirtis kind of took the lead, and she started. So she was sort of moderating the whole thing. Michael Dorn was taking pictures of the whole thing, wasn't even paying attention, and she kept talking shit. She's like, "Dorney, what are you doing? Like, we got a thing we're doing here. You're just sitting there taking pictures." And he's like, "Well, it's for the 25th anniversary. I want to make sure I get all the pictures." He's kind of a goofball,
right?
Anyway, so there's an audience question, and somebody asks. It was the whole group, I think. Like, is there anything that you would do differently or regret? And Frank says, well, I think I might do this differently. And he does the fucking slanted walk across the stage.
Awesome.
Right out of the TV show. It was fucking hilarious.
That's
anyway.
Awesome. So he actually did. I thought maybe that's just how he walked.
No, right. he did that. He said he was like, he kind of did it as a choice, but I don't think he remembered why he did that. He just wanted to give the character a particular sort of physicality, the same as how he sort of steps over chairs, right? He can't just sit in a fucking chair without mounting it first.
That's true. He does that all the time.
Yeah, he totally does that all the time. I know he's tall.
That's pretty boss, though.
Yeah, I love it. Every time he fucking steps over a chair, I'm like, yeah, Riker. When he leans on the ops console next to Data there, he puts his leg up, puts his crotch right in Data's ear.
And I think you get a couple of double takes with Data too.
Yeah,
he peeks over.
He does. He does a couple.
It's like, how close is he? Right?
Pretty close. And like Riker's junk, that he's packing.
It's like, are you prepared for the kind of death you've earned, little man? As he talks to the crotch, right?
No, that's what Riker's crotch says to Data. Anyway, what were we talking about?
Discovery.
Oh yeah,
that was a discovery.
No, I think it would be cool to see them play those characters again. Unfortunately, I think that ship sailed. I was thinking what might have been a kind of a cool idea just from my fanboy perspective. Also post TNG, but I thought like take it a little bit further into the future and take it after maybe like, let's say the Dominion War had completely decimated the Federation, but the Federation won, but was in a a complete shambles afterwards. And then
Which
Earth
it would have been.
What's that?
Which it pretty much would have been, the fleet at least.
Right, exactly. So then I thought it might have been kind of neat if, from Earth, they reform Starfleet and then try to rebuild the Federation. So they send ships out to, kind of reestablish contact with the worlds that, all the worlds that have been decimated by this war that had been in. So they're kind of out in this post-war universe, but with the original concepts of Star Trek intact, right? The hope for unity and peace, but in a much different type of universe that had kind of been destroyed. So I thought that might have been kind of a cool idea, but anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting, but you have to, I don't know if like individual contact episodes where they're going to be meeting a new species every week. I mean,
well, no, but it doesn't need to be.
I'm not sure if that's going to work anymore, man. I don't know. Like, that's why this show, it's like, this is a tough sell. I don't know what they're going to do here.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I don't know what they're going to do either, because, and I guess maybe that's another question we need to ask, is if that is all they're going to do, why bother? I mean, what stories are still left to tell in that vein? And
then is it going to be that because the title of the show and the ship is Discovery?
Right.
So I'm leaning towards the fact that they're going back to the roots.
Yeah.
Even though they might tell arcing storylines and in a novel format. So maybe it'll be TNG, but more continuous parts of TNG. Continue like from episode 1 to episode 10 or episode 13, whatever it may be.
Right.
So I'm a bit worried there. I'm not sure if that's going to necessarily fly. It's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very difficult to not retread similar territory. But that being said, if they have good writers and decent actors, then they can make it work.
The cast will make or break it.
Well, as we've talked about before, I mean, the cast, they kind of have to have chemistry. If they're not the greatest actors in the world, but the scripts are good. I mean, the TNG cast, aside from Patrick Stewart, and I mean, Brent Spiner was good on there. I mean, nobody there was pulling out a great performance. They were all good, like believable as their characters, but the writing
made them better.
And it worked, right? And on Deep Space Nine, the writing made them good.
Yeah.
As long as the writing is good, then it can work. And I mean, they have to have some chemistry, like Deep Space Nine. They have chemistry. The writing's good. The actors aren't super talented, but it's fun. It still hits, right? You can still make it work. That's why I think Star Trek has always been very contingent. The quality of Star Trek's been very contingent on the writing. If they get good writers, they're in good shape.
Yeah, but I think a good start with Brian Fuller. So
yeah,
and Nicholas Meyer. So hopefully they need to pull a miracle out of their hat, though.
They got their work cut out for them. That's for sure.
Be tough.
Yeah,
it's going to be tough because they still have to make it slightly mainstream as well. And I want that. I want them to find that balance.
Yeah.
Of the roots and spirit of Star Trek while still amping it up to a modern level.
Yeah, I think that there's good news there because, I mean, depending on I hope they get a little bit more latitude because it's on an on-demand service. You see shows on Netflix, HBO, AMC, these sort of alternative channels. They have a lot more latitude to do different things. They don't have to be very generic. They can take a few more risks, and that's worked really well. So if they're afforded some of the same latitude that some of these other avenues give their shows, I'm excited to see what modern TV Star Trek is going to look like. Yes. And if it looks like more what we see on Netflix and some of the cable channels, I'm really excited. If it's going to be modern network, like modern network TV is a giant steaming pile of crap.
It is.
Network TV has taken a huge step backwards.
It has. I mean, I pretty much only watch everything that's on Netflix, only Netflix or HBO.
Yeah.
And AMC. That's
and AMC.
Those are the only three channels I really go to anymore.
Yeah. Stuff on like NBC, CBS, ABC, none of that stuff's watchable. It's so generic. And that's not where they were going. Like
Shh, don't tell my wife. I've tried many times.
Oh, I know. But like when Lost came out, it was mainstream network TV. And, say what you will about how Lost ended. That was Like they did a lot of things that were very progressive for a network. Yeah. And then as soon as Lost ended, they took like 10 steps back in the other direction.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, it's okay as long as there are other sources where these great shows are coming are going to.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. Okay. I don't care about the networks. If the networks die off and that brand of TV dies, great.
Yeah, great.
But I don't want Star Trek to be a casualty of that.
Yeah, no, and that is a risk. So that's why I'm worried. But we can have a toast to the undiscovered country, which will be Discovery. Hopefully, it'll go in a positive direction.
To be. Or not to be.
Cry havoc! That'll be me after, if I'm not happy with the pilot, right?
That'll be the after credits sequence.
Is there anything else you want to talk about, or do you want to wrap this up with maybe a fun little ranking of our movies we can compare and contrast?
Yeah, let's do a ranking. I mean, we could honestly, there's a million topics we could still bring up and talk about, but let's start to bring it home here and do a bit of a wrap up. So why don't you give me your list?
Well, how about this? Instead of just listing it all, how about we do maybe the bottom three and compare the bottom three?
Okay.
And then we go the next three and then the next three all the way to the top.
Yeah, all right.
Because I have a feeling the bottom, like maybe not the bottom three, the top three will probably be the same.
Probably.
And the bottom three, well, it's interesting. So my worst one out of the all, probably no surprise to you, is Into Darkness.
Yeah.
It is atrocious beyond any explanation I can give anymore. It is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Nemesis is next, right near the bottom. And then, hate to say it, but Final Frontier is right near the bottom there too. It's in the bottom third bracket. So, what about yours?
Okay. Well, my absolute worst is Nemesis.
Okay, so at least we share something common there.
Yeah. Second worst, I'm going to go with Insurrection.
Oh, well, yeah, it's pretty low, but I'm surprised you would put it that low. Okay. Anyways.
Yeah.
I can't defend it for not being there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. You can't defend it. And then after that, see, now it's getting tough. I don't know. I guess I kind of want to go Into Darkness at this point, although I don't think I hate it. I don't hate it at all, really. I know I don't hate it as much as you, but yeah, I guess Into Darkness has to come in.
It better.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, like, I'm thinking of some moments in the other ones. I'm like, that one's pretty bad too. Yeah, that one's pretty bad. But yeah, we'll go with that. So we'll go Nemesis, Insurrection, Into Darkness.
Okay, not bad.
Yeah.
Are you surprised at any of my Final Frontier being at the bottom, right near the bottom for me?
Well, not really, because if you take that out, what else would be in the bottom? I'm not going to disagree with you. It's not a good movie.
No, there are funny parts to it that I absolutely adore. But those five minutes in cumulative time do not make up for the rest of the piece of shit. Right? So,
what are you talking about? I love when he throws the cat chick into the pool table.
Yeah, I love that part.
What the hell is going on there?
Actually, just a side note, the one thing I do like about the Final Frontier is that action set piece where they invade the shanty town.
I didn't mind it, except they're looking so old. Like I don't think they could have pulled off that invasion there. And as much as I love Nichelle Nichols,
you love the fan dance. Come on,
man! Like,
is she naked? Hold your horse, Captain.
You won with horseback.
All right, so here's my next threesome here. Okay. It's a tough one for me to say which one's worse than the other one, but right now I'm going to say Beyond. Star Trek Beyond is after Final Frontier. But it's really tied with Insurrection. I give bonus points to Insurrection. I place it slightly higher simply because I feel that there's still more of an understanding of what Trek is. It was just the execution of that movie was bad. But the concept I liked more than what Beyond was. So that's why Insurrection's a little higher for me. And then, this might surprise you as well, then The Voyage Home is next. I like The Voyage Home. It's funny. It's just, for me, it's not super rewatchable. It's just a little too dry. It's just not enough happens. It's a bad first act. Even though I love the humor, I love all the one-liners that come out of this movie. They're iconic. You know, you love Italian.
Double dumbass on you.
Double dumbass on you. You love Italian. Hello, computer. You know, so how do you know he wasn't the one who invented it? Nuclear vessels. I mean, all of this stuff is gold, but beyond, I mean, there are little moments that are sprinkled through the movie that are just amazing and just fun. And it's a fun one, I think. That's one of the ones I'd watch with my kids, for sure, one of the earlier ones. If I had to watch it out of order, I'd probably show them that. After, it's interesting. I don't know how I'm going to really introduce my kids to Star Trek. They already know about the Enterprise. They're only like 2.5 years old. So I got to
they're a little young yet, so.
I'll probably hit them with the original series. I mean, if Shatner will either draw them in or just send them for the hills. So
I figure you got to just put them in front of it and let Destiny take its course.
But it's got to be with Shatner.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'd say chronologically is how you have to introduce them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can't wait too old, because then they're definitely going to say this isn't modern enough for me.
Yeah, you're going to have to do that before they watch other TV.
Yeah.
So soon, dude, soon.
Yes. Okay, so I said Beyond, Insurrection, and Voyage Home. How about yourself?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go with... I'm going to go with Final Frontier. And I like Final Frontier, but it is bad. But, like, there's some Star Trek here, though. That's the only thing. Like, the Kirk, Spock, McCoy relationship, they spend the whole movie together pretty much.
And it's good because of that.
And that works. And the idea of this supreme being, like that's a well-traveled Star Trek trope.
It is. Well, it's really the question of life. What is the meaning of life? Star Trek's trying to do something like that. Too bad it's just terrible.
Yeah, well, it's a poorly made film. This low-rent actor who plays Cybok. Who is this guy?
Yeah, Lawrence Luckenbill? I don't know what the fuck his name is.
What is that guy's name?
That guy seems like he has just dropped off the face of this planet.
I kind of liked some of his scenes. Like, he has that maniacal cackle. And he's such a counterpoint to Spock. I mean, cool idea. And you know what? I mean, he was okay. He was definitely low rent. But, I don't know. I like so much about it. The random Klingon enemies chasing them just there for no fucking reason at all.
Damn you, sir. You will try.
Please, Captain, not in front of the Klingons. Lots of good lines in this movie, too.
There's good lines in everyone, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So, but that'll be there. Then after that, I guess we'll go with, I don't know. Yeah, Star Trek Beyond probably comes next. Like, I like Beyond, but it's kind of,
yeah, it's kind of meh. Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't do a whole lot to further it. And then I'm going to go with Search for Spock.
Okay.
And I like, there's a lot about Search for Spock that's good, but it feels very low rent to me. I mean, Christopher Lloyd chewing up scenery as a Klingon is kind of cool.
I like Christopher Lloyd as the Klingon.
I did like him. Yeah.
He gets a bad rap.
He was fine. He was good. I liked him being over the top a bit. The destruction of the Enterprise was very iconic here, very emotional. That was good. But everything else is poor. I think there's some poor production values here. What's his name as David? He sucks, and
it's okay. I think you're a little hard on Search for Spock, but I mean,
it's just
it's not. We're getting to the upper echelon after this, anyways. So I mean, you have to place
exactly. We're basically it's
right
at the top of the bottom half. I mean, it's not terrible. But it's got some problems with it that I think it has some pacing problems as well, but also some very good moments. Anyway.
Okay, so you said Final Frontier, Beyond, and then Search for Spock. Okay, so my next one's climbing higher on the ladder, but still not quite up. There's Trek 09, then Search for Spock, then Generations.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna go in the next echelon here. I'm going to go with Voyage Home, Generations, and Star Trek 09.
Oh, so pretty close. Pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty close in there. Yeah, and then you're getting... Why don't we just finish off, because it's only 4 left, so then the next 4... So these would be my top 4 in reverse order, so 4 to 1. Motion Picture, Undiscovered Country, First Contact, Wrath of Khan.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think we have the same 4 in the top 4 here, right? So my next one... So Motion Picture...
Motion Picture is your number 4?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Same here.
And then I'm going to go Then it's Wrath of Khan.
What?
Yeah.
Wrath of Khan is third?
Yeah, Wrath of Khan is third.
Wow.
And then it's going to be First Contact and then Undiscovered Country.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, all good movies.
And those and my top three are like really tight together. Like they're separated by less than one. Like it's like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3.
No, for me, Wrath of Khan is echelons even above the other two. It is beyond untouchable. It is one of the best movies ever made.
It is not Star Trek.
It's one of the best movies ever made.
It is not one of the best movies ever made.
It is, but that's maybe for another show.
If it's not for the Star Trek podcast,
we're at 2.5 hours here, so.
Well, that's true. It's too uneven to be the best movie ever made.
I'm not saying it's the best ever.
One of the best movies ever made.
One of the best.
It's too uneven to be one of the best movies ever made.
It is near flawless.
Well, it doesn't have spectacular performances from everybody.
I would disagree with you, but that's
I'm saying everybody. Like, I'm counting Chekhov, I'm counting fucking Uhura, I'm counting Paul Winfield's. I mean, I guess Paul Winfield was okay.
What's wrong with Chekhov?
He's a plug.
Well, yeah. His ear did get plugged there for sure.
He did, yeah, he did. He did get, yeah.
He did get plugged.
He did get plugged. The guy who plays David, what's that guy's name? He was on that episode of TNG that one time as well.
Fine. He was fine. What's wrong with him? He's a good player.
He sucks.
Oh my god.
He doesn't suck. I'm just riling you up, dude.
Yeah.
No, he was fine. He was fine, but I'm not saying it's not a great movie. I mean, I love it too.
It's still Star Trek.
It's not about anything that Star Trek is about.
Well, I mean,
that's my only problem with it. If it was
I can't get into it now because then 2.5 hours is going to go to 5.5 hours because we're going to have to pick apart the entire movie to do it justice. It's just like the show, just like the rest of this episode. It's so overwhelming. I don't know where to start and where to finish. Talking about Star Trek.
That's true. So let's finish here. We did our ranking. Actually, there is one more question I have for you that I didn't get to ask.
Okay, go ahead.
And we'll end on that because Star Trek begins on TV and ends on TV, as you said, so we'll end on TV. Can you tell me what your favorite episode is of all of it?
Oh, boy. Oh, my God.
Like somebody's got a gun to your head. You got a hair trigger pointed at your head. What's your favorite Star Trek episode?
Oh, man. Measure of a Man is up there for me. It's right near the top. I could rewatch that all the time. I love City on the Edge of Forever, as most people do. It's a great episode. I love Amok Time for different reasons. It's just a fun episode to watch. It's so iconic. I forget the episode where you have the in the original series where they have the black, the guys were mirrored. They have the black and the white and the white and the black.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember what it's called, but I know the episode,
It's a good episode. The Corbinite Maneuver. I always like that one.
Oh, the Corbinite Maneuver is fantastic.
Yeah. How do I pick? I mean, the Best of Both Worlds, Inner Light. I love Family. There's another good one for TNG.
Yeah.
And The Pale Moonlight for DS9.
Oh, good choice. Yep.
My God. I mean, it's impossible. I can't give you one.
Okay. No, all good answers.
If I had to give you one just for my sheer and utter enjoyment, it would be Amok Time.
Okay.
Just for the sheer iconography of that episode and Shatner versus Spock with that music.
Yeah.
You don't get any better than that.
No, iconic is the word for sure. Yeah. Good call. Yeah. No, all good answers.
Or what's it called? Oh, the episode with the Romulans and Captain Kirk. Or even The Enemy Within, where there's two Captain Kirks. How can I forget these ones?
Enemy Within's pretty good. Which is
Captain Kirk?
Which one? With the Romulans with Picard, you said?
No. In the original series with Kirk. Where he goes, "I'll kill you, filthy traitor." I kill you. But it's a good episode.
Well, they're all good.
No, I forget which one that's called. How can I forget that one? Oh, blasphemy. Oh, my goodness. No, but there's so many in DS9, too. My God. And so many in TNG. It's impossible. Maybe I should choose the game, the Wesley episode, the Wesley Crusher episode. Where he saves the day.
God.
Or
I don't mind that episode, but...
Or how about Up the Long Ladder? Does that suit the purpose here?
Oh, God. Even better. What was that episode? Season 1, TNG, I think it's episode 3, where they go to that planet and
Kashimura has to fight that other girl.
But they're all black.
Yeah,
but
that's an extremely uncomfortable episode to watch. Not just for the racial undertones, but just it's such a dumb episode.
Oh yeah, it's bad on many levels.
I've got the greatest episode ever. It's the one with Q. He gives Riker the powers, and Wesley gets stabbed to death.
Yeah, through the back.
The animal things.
What is that episode called?
You know the best thing about, I don't know what it's called, but the best thing is even after that, or before that, Worf goes running off towards them to take them all on.
Yeah.
It was great. Oh, I even like the one, wasn't it the pilot? Where, one of the episodes was Nagilum.
Nagilum, that's a season 2. That was
that's a good one.
I like that episode, actually. That's a really good episode, yeah.
But my favorite thing in there is when he comes, I think Worf jumps to the front and he points the phaser at the screen. And like Picard just calmly says, Worf, you're just going to shoot the screen.
I think, he probably like leaps over the console too, right?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Good old Worf. That's a good episode, actually. I think it's unfairly maligned, that episode. That's a good episode.
It's a great episode.
Yeah. I think season 2 of Next Generation has more good episodes than people remember, to be honest.
It's got a few.
It's got a few. I like we were trying to wrap it up, and then we just keep getting back into it, so...
but there's so many. I mean, Parallels, Inner Light, Chain of Command. God, what do you pick from? All the Dominion episodes in DS9. There's a great O'Brien episode in DS9 where he gets sent to jail.
Oh, that's a good one,
right?
Man. That's a good episode.
But it's all implanted in the memory.
It's all in his mind, right? Yeah.
So he has to live through that.
That's a good episode.
Such a great episode.
Yeah.
And then we talked about the Cisco and his son episodes, and there's a lot of great science fiction ones in DS9 too.
Yeah, they did have some really good sci-fi stuff in DS9. I like that one O'Brien episode where he keeps kind of like flashing. He keep traveling back to he keeps jumping around in time.
Was that the one with his daughter?
No, not the one with his daughter, where he keeps shooting forward into the future, I think, and seeing the future, and then getting like pulled back.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. I think I remember. Yeah,
I can't remember, but that was a good one.
Oh man, there's so many, and there's even some good funny ones in DS9 too, like the Magnificent Ferengi. There's a great episode. I love that one.
Yeah,
where the Ferengi go and they have to trade up to get the mom back. But I just love the humor throughout that whole episode. Oh, but there's all the ones with Garrick too, right? I mean, there's another, even, what is it called? Dr. Bashir, I presume, the 007 Bond one.
How can I like that one.
Hippocrates Noah.
Yeah, Hippocrates Noah. That was a good episode too.
On my island.
Yeah, it's tough to choose. For sure. The correct answer is Yesterday's Enterprise, but you're right. There's lots of good ones to choose from. So
Yesterday's Enterprise is good. I should say that too. It's so up there, so close to the top, but I can't pick a favorite. There's just too many.
Okay. Well, we won't belabor it anymore. We'll settle on the fact that there are dozens, if not hundreds, of fucking incredible episodes of Star Trek. So
there is.
If you haven't seen Star Trek, go see some Star Trek. You will not be disappointed. I will guarantee it. That's all you can really say about it. If you haven't seen it, go watch it.
Exactly.
Done. Enough said.
All right, so Geoff, I think that does it for today. What about next time? What do you have in store for us?
Okay, so next time, here's what I have in store for us. We have come to the conclusion of another summer blockbuster season, chock-a-block full of sequels and superhero movies. So I'm going to take us back to 1995. Sorry, I'm going to take us back to 1995. To a simpler time of the superhero blockbuster, and we are going to take a look at the forgotten Batman Forever.
Interesting. Yeah. Batman Forever. Okay.
Batman Forever. Maybe what we would normally consider a candidate for the show, but I have my reasons, which we'll dive into next time.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. I haven't seen that movie in such a long time, so I'm hoping there's not good reason for that, so...
Well, like I say, I mean, it's more of a conceptual idea, I think, that we want to dive into. But again, we'll get into that on the next episode. So Batman Forever for next time. And yeah, this has been fun talking about Trek with you, man, for the millionth time, obviously. But it was good.
Yes, it was fun. Until next time.
All right, man. Until next time, we'll see you then.
All right. Cheers.
All right.